Thank you all very much for joining us. Welcome to today's Alumni Education webinar, Building a Sustainable Data Analytics Orientation, brought to you by Professor Raj Venkatesan. This webinar is also brought to you in partnership with our Office of Engagement. I'm Jen Oliver, the Associate Director of Alumni Engagement here at Darden, and this webinar represents our continuing efforts to provide educational content to our alumni worldwide. We will begin momentarily, but I need to go over a few logistical details. You will notice on your screen the chat feature. You can use this tool to type in questions during the webinar. Please feel free to send a question at any time. You don't need to wait until a question and answer period. In the meantime, please make sure that all of your microphones are set to mute. Now, allow me to introduce our presenter. Raj is a research professor of business administration and teaches marketing, technology products, marketing strategy, and marketing analytics. He was selected as one of the top 20 rising young scholars in marketing by the Marketing Science Institute, one of the top 40 professors under 40 by Poets and Quants magazine, and recognized among the top 5% of marketing strategy scholars by the Journal of Marketing Education. So I know that you're all in good hands today. With that, allow me to turn it over to Raj.
Hello, everyone. Good to see you, and thanks for joining us today. This is in Darden style, so feel free to jump in with questions and your comments as I start presenting. But in the next hour, what I thought I would do is share some insights from a research I'm currently doing on data analytics and how organizations can develop an analytics orientation. So this is based on my interviews with senior leaders across several industries in banking, in financial services, life sciences, technology, manufacturing, and retail. And this is a work in progress. So part of my objective also with this seminar is for me to get feedback from you on the framework that I've been developing over the last few years, and also see if there are opportunities where I can continue the research, and if your organization is interested, I'm always ready to engage more and learn from you. So think of this as a teaser, as a sample of my current research. I welcome any comments and future engagement opportunities around this. So what is this research about? So this starts with the basic observation that I had, that there's a lot of buzz about big data and analytics, right? And just like you, I've been reading a lot about this. And in 2012, there was a Harvard Business Review article that said that companies in the top third of their industry in use of data-driven decision making are on average 6% more profitable than their competitors. And by data, what it also means is not just looking at the past, but looking at what you have in learning about consumers and also forecasting the future, about getting foresight about the future, about using analytics to see what would happen and how would the company react based on their understanding of the market. Now, there are a lot of companies that are really good at doing this, and there are some famous examples that I have here. If you look at Netflix, we know what they are good at, and they have taken analytics into a space where it is usually not thought to be analytic friendly. I mean, if you look at creative spaces and creating new content, they've used analytics there based on their insights about what their consumers watch. Zillow.com, another example where they have used publicly available information about real estate sales and give recommendations to consumers on the prices that they should pay for their real estate. And it has also become so good that it has changed the relationship between buyers and realtors. MLife is MGM's loyalty program that was based on analytics and has got a lot of rave reviews for what the program they do. Nationwide did a unique experiment which was very successful. Is they collaborated with Ohio State. They're in Columbus, Ohio, so they collaborated with their university that is local to them with their data science group there, and built a lab in the university to help them with analytics, risk prediction, and customer lifetime value predictions. And so this was like you typically do for R&D and product development. These guys did for analytics and business development. So these are definitely some big examples we have seen, but strategic insights from big data are also rare. We had a conference here in Darden in 2015. We had about 100 executives attend this conference, and it was unanimously agreed that adoption of marketing analytics among senior management is a major challenge. A Duke CMO survey shows companies are, however, not using analytics and not evaluating the quality of analytics. 86% of respondents in a McKinsey survey said organizations have only been best or somewhat effective at meeting the primary objective of their data and analytics programs. So this almost tells a story of tale of two cities here, right? There is this one side which is really using analytics and data and using it very well and gaining insights from it and creating new business models. And then you have another side that finds it difficult to use analytics in their daily decisions. And so our objective in this research is to identify what are some of these factors. What do organizations need to enable this data analytics orientation? What we call data analytics orientation is a process that firms adopt to harness analytics and data in their strategy. And given that I'm teaching marketing, that's where a lot of my work is. A lot of my examples and focus would be in the marketing space. So before going ahead, I wanted to get a pulse of the group here, right? What do you see as your organization? Do you think your organization is analytics and insights rich, or having challenges adopting analytics? So maybe we can do a very unscientific poll here as you put in the chat box, so I can get a sense of where you are in this journey in your organization. Okay. Okay, so if I look at it, it almost feels like 10% of you, just on browsing through your responses here, less than 10% of you claim you're analytics rich. And that's about consistent with what survey after survey says. So in that sense, what I'm proposing and trying to find out is what can we learn from both the people who are analytics rich and also the ones that are developing their analytics capability in terms of how they can do this. So I want to say that what I'm trying to understand here is beyond customer centricity and top management emphasis. Some of the things that you always hear, comments like this: I can get silos to work together to get me data across organizational boundaries. If I talk about the customer experience, how going this extra mile could make a difference in the customer's life. This was a senior VP of strategic analysis at a financial services firm, basically saying that companies that have customer centricity, focused on customers, are also analytically oriented because they're able to merge data across silos. And we acknowledge that in this research. This research is not about showing that customer centricity and top management emphasis is important, because I think that has been told a lot and everybody understands this. We saw this in Samsung with their customer centricity and analytics initiatives, how over 14 or 15 years here, from 2000 to 2014, in the interbrand rankings, they went from rank 43, that is the dotted line over here, to rank 8. So lower number is good in ranks, and their brand value went from about 5 billion to about 45 billion, and they did it on the banks of analytics, on the not the banks, on the backs of analytics and customer centric initiatives. We have heard of this. I've heard from many, from manufacturing firms, that their drive to understand end consumer needs, to develop better products and customers, drives them to use text data from salesperson reports, consumer blogs, and harness all of this to anticipate customer needs. Definitely, firms that are focused on serving customers and are rigorously customer oriented and have top management emphasis have, it's almost table stakes to be analytics rich. What we are trying to do is, beyond this, what are some of the challenges that these companies face? So I'm going to propose a process, and we'll come back to this later, but I just want to introduce this to you to prime you to think about what I'm trying to say here. This process that we call for data analytics driven marketing strategy is this 5-step process which we think gets you to a culture of analytics, where every decision the firm makes is based on data and analytics and insights about the customer and foresight and predictions about the future. And it starts with the business challenges or the business imperatives. What is it that the business is trying to do? And so analytics is driven towards the business, the priorities of the business, and maps it into some of the metrics that you use to evaluate the different strategies, and the mental model. What is it the manager's idea about how the market works? What is the heuristic about how their actions impact the customers? And then use data and insights to test your mental model. And the transformation is where, when you have new insights, when you learn new things about your customers and competition, you then update this mental model based on your insights. And that's also what learning is about. And this updation also implies that you're now going to transform your organization. Managers will have to change how they act and what they do, and that transformation is supremely important. But this is not a cycle. It's drawn as a cycle, but the challenge is not doing this in a cyclical way. The challenge is doing it all at once. And that, I think, is the thing that companies need to understand. And we'll talk more about it at the last 15 to 20 minutes of the seminar. But what I also want to first talk about is the 5, what we call as paradoxes of data analytics. And the 5 paradoxes are market success, uncertain outcomes, problem complexity, data puration, and perfection pursuit. The main thing about these paradoxes, the reason I call them paradoxes, is because you would think that if you're successful, if you're good, you want to be great. And so you'll be striving to use analytics. Doesn't happen that way. If there are uncertain outcomes, if your future is uncertain as a company, you would use analytics. But people tend not to do that. If they are faced with a complex problem, you would think people would use analytics, but turns out people don't do that. You would need to learn about your data and develop feedback loops, but people don't do that. perfection comes in the way of actually getting things done in analytics. And so what we are going to go through is now through each of these paradoxes that we have found in our interactions with managers to see what happens. And as I go through this, please feel free to type or respond and tell me whether I'm full of beans or if this makes sense, or if you have anything to add. I welcome your comments on these. So market success. So one of the things that was very striking for me was the companies that are hesitating to use analytics are the ones who have been successful not using analytics, so they think that they can get through the next phase of their evolution without analytics because they've done that before. And the challenge is that the world is changing and the way companies are doing things are different and the competition is changing. Even if these guys don't do it, the competition is changing the rules of the game and they are using analytics to develop better and more valuable products for their customers. And so you come to the stage where companies become complacent because they didn't use analytics before, but the world is changing around them and they need to use it. So even if they had done that, the companies find it difficult to use the value of their analytics or the capabilities they developed with analytics in one place in a different place. So there is this financial services company where they've hired a new CMO. And this company is actually very good in analytics. As this CMO said, we're very good at using data analytics in product design, and this was for risk assessments. But I have challenges in using the same capabilities to develop our brand story. And as this company grows, brand becomes a big imperative for them. But they have difficulty taking the capabilities they have in one part of the organization and moving it to another part that needs analytics now. And the organization is also not sure whether they need analytics in this new division, which was not that important so far. But as the company has grown, has become more and more important, and it needs to be better and better at it and use its core capability, which was analytics. So you see that even with analytics-rich firms, as the world evolves around them, they are less likely to use analytics. If it's not a culture, if it's not a culture that permeates across the whole organization. Now, uncertain outcomes. You would always think that, when the market is uncertain, when there are challenges in the market, you would use analytics. But take an example of a company like ESPN. Now, they first had ESPN that they launched through the cable companies. Then they had Watch ESPN, which was their operation with digital streaming. And then they had Cricket Pass, which was their way to even go around the cable companies in streaming and directly go to the consumers. Now, this is in reaction to Netflix and Hulu and all these direct-to-consumer streaming services. Now, in a company that is in a similar space like ESPN, what I learned from them was the market is evolving so rapidly that the firm is struggling strategically to move from a cable-oriented company over here to something like this, which is a direct-to-consumer company. So the move from a B2B to a B2C company is very challenging for them. And what is happening is the use of analytics is not that much in this firm, even though they have the data and they also have very capable marketing scientists. So it's not just that they don't have marketing scientists, it is that they have them, but they don't know where to direct their attention. They don't have clear key performance metrics. They don't know what the analytics needs to do. Is it about understanding satisfaction of the cable providers or understanding customer acquisition and retention in the B2C market? This is contrasted with what I heard from a vice president of branding in a global entertainment conglomerate. She basically said, we want to know where the customers will be 10 years from now. And that's pretty amazing. They predict 10 years from now. And we have C-level strategic priority setting process every year that is very fact-based and involves us taking a stance on uncertain outcomes, learning from the past, planning for the future. And this then informs analytics, marketing, and other strategic functions across the enterprise. So every year they go through this process that is fact-based, helped by analytics to set priorities, to make strategic bets on where the consumers will be 10 years down the road. So it's a moving cycle they go through. And then that priority informs what analytics is going to do for them in that year. So this is contrasted where the other company, where they were still struggling to figure out what their strategic bet should be, and that even though they had the people and the capacity, they were not able to direct their analytics. So you can see, depending on when there are uncertain outcomes, even if you have capabilities, you may not use analytics depending on how you treat the strategic priority setting process. I also heard from a marketing director in a media company that they tend to use analytics less when many groups are involved. Decision making is more complex. A multidimensional decision leads to less use of data and analytics, which is kind of surprising because if you think about it, this is where analytics is important when there is complexity. Then why don't people use it? It is because everybody comes to the table with their agenda. They want to take their perspective and build it into their own world, and they look at the data with their ideas. And a large multidimensional complex problem implies you need to merge heuristics and data, and that capability is not available easily. And that's a capacity and capability that companies need to develop. So what does this mean? To do this, companies need to break complex problems into small parts, know how to combine data and heuristics, and it means developing rapid prototypes and testing and learning and synchronizing decision cycles. So what this implies is you're taking small problems, breaking a complex problem into a small part, and then going and solving each small part with data and analytics, and then putting together all these parts. And that takes some discipline from the strategic team to be able to do that. So it's a collaboration between the strategic and analytics teams to be able to address this complex problem. And you won't have data to address all your complex problems. You would have things like, for example, predicting the long-term effects of advertising could be a complex problem, depending on the industry you're in. In those cases, you could just take a rule of thumb that the short-term effect of advertising is half the long-term effect. And so the long-term effect is 2x the short-term effect. And so you just measure the short-term effect, but trade is the same long-term and short-term. All the trade effects are found in the short-term itself. So you could take this heuristic and just measure the short-term effects and then use these heuristics to predict long-term. This is another way to address problem complexity. So I have a question on the chat box here. Is it possible that the level of comfort in management with data is what allows the focus away from data? Yes, I think how much the management is comfortable in using data determines whether they will use it or not. And what we are trying to do is find out how management can get that comfort in data. What are the processes and what are some of the paradoxes that they need to be aware of as a firm and overcome to be able to use this familiarity with data, to gain this familiarity? Because certainly if they are not familiar, they're not going to use it, or if they don't understand the analytics, they're not going to use it. But there is a way to get them to be familiar, and that's what this research is trying to address. But to do that, to understand the process, you need to understand the challenges, and that's what we are covering now. Now, if you think about problem complexity, you can also taking the long-term, short-term effects of advertising one step ahead. if you're launching a new product, you could come up with your own weights in terms of your decision making, your own mental weights. So in the early stages, you would use some management priors, right? Early stages about uh, the long-term effect of advertising. In later stages, you would rely more on data and less on management beliefs. And you don't need a big mathematical complex model to do that. You just need an understanding that, hey, early stages, I'm going to go heuristics, but I'm going to collect data and over time test my heuristics and then eventually move into a completely data-driven system. Now, the fourth paradox that I wanted to talk about is data curation. Now, this is important because people talk about data scientists, and that's a good term, but I don't think that means much when you're thinking about a strategic, ongoing data analytics culture. Data scientists are very good at looking at the data and addressing business problems. But what I mean as data curators are the ones who are data scientists, but are also people who are like museum curators, historians, and they develop stories about the companies based on data. They are the keepers of what we have learned about the company and the market using data. And they are the ones who tell the story of the business using data. So I have this quote which I like here, which says, from Kipling, it said, if history were taught in the form of stories, it would never be forgotten. And given this is the Darden Group, I can say that that's also why I use case studies, because it's a story about business. And that is why we teach cases, because you don't forget your case studies, and that's comes to you every day when you make these decisions. At least that's our hope. I have this picture of John Oliver here because research shows why people like him are more powerful than maybe the standard media companies like CNN. It's because they make the story about you and me. It's not about any abstract concept or abstract theory or happenings in a different part of the world. What they are able to do is take the happenings around the world and make it about you and me. And research has shown that that is part of their appeal to people and why they are very popular. So they are also storytellers and they contextualize the stories. So when I talk about curators, what I'm talking about is they curate the data. They are the people who are keepers of the stories of the business. And words matter. Data curators are the ones who know how to use words. This is a word cloud of what was in the annual report of Kroger before they became customer centric, and that's the lower half, this one, before, and this is after they became customer centric. And you can see this big difference, right? Before, in the annual report, they never talked about the customer. Post, customer is the biggest part that they talk about in their annual reports. And this tells you the story of the business, the evolution of Kroger. And Guardian has this data blog on on journalism. And basically they say that analytics is a form of curation. And visualization supports this narrative. So visualization is great, but it has to support a story. And analytics is the one that curates the data to tell the story of the business, not only tell today's story, but also tell the evolution of the story. Oh, great. I should look at this book. Cole Nussbaumer. Thank you, Sherry. The last paradox is perfection of pursuit of perfection. So in many of the seminars I've given, one of the questions I always get is, well, we are trying to build the data, we want to be data analytics rich, But to do that, we'll need to build a data analytics team, which will involve a lot of resources running into the millions. And chances of our CEO approving this without any proof of success is pretty slim. And this is true. I mean, why would a CEO approve or somebody higher up approve a whole project when the outcome is uncertain? So what do you do then? That's why the picture on the side about of a low hanging fruit, right? Go for the low hanging fruits. Okay, and what this is what exactly CMO and used car retailer did. He basically tapped into the agile methodology and started running 2-week cycles. He started doing rapid prototypes. They wanted to move from static pricing to dynamic pricing. At least the CMO's idea was that the company could do much better if they moved to dynamic pricing. But there was a lot of resistance in the company because the operations and finance guys were not big fans of that, and they thought it was risky, and they thought that it would cause a lot of stress into their processes. So he first ran a 2-week cycle with one SKU in one city, and then found the results. But in this 2-week cycle, he included the CFO, COO, and Chief Analytics Officer. All were in this meeting with their teams. They decided on what experiment to run, check the performance of that experiment, learn, and plan the experiment. So they started iterating like this. So, and now they have become much more dynamic in their pricing, and the other folks who were needed for the implementation of this program, who were resisting it at first, saw the benefits because they were part of the process, and this kind of improved. So he was not going for perfection of complete shift to dynamic pricing, but he said, okay, let me go one at a time. Let me be scrappy. Let me go look for the low hanging fruit, show value, and then build this over time. I think that's the one thing a lot of companies need to understand is this process doesn't need to be this massive investment. It starts by identifying easy wins. Do some iterations, some rapid sprints, learn and move forward with it, and resources will come to you. So perfection can get in the way of actually doing things, and it is definitely the case in analytics. So what we want is a situation like this of a CEO in a bank told me once, we want analytics to ask the strategic questions, not just fill requests from the line managers. That's what we see as the end goal of this analytics orientation. So how do we get there? And what is a challenge are these paradoxes. But once you overcome these paradoxes, you could get to a stage where you have analytics at the seat of the table, asking the questions, and people actually not even thinking it of as a separate function, but it is embedded throughout the organization. So how do we get there? We resolve the paradox using this 5-step process, and it is similar to this rapid cycle we talked about, except that this all has to happen at once, fast, and then go to the next cycle. So what are these? So I'll use the Airbnb, a case on Airbnb that I have developed to talk about this process. Okay, business challenge. So the business challenge is the data-driven process begins by identifying what is the business imperative. Is there a problem or opportunity that could be addressed using big data and analytics? The next step in any of this challenge is to identify the strategic options to address the business challenge, the key performance metrics, and that would indicate the performance of each strategic option. So let's think about Airbnb and what it means for them. So before I go to the next slide, how many of you have not stayed in an Airbnb? Not. I think most of you have, but has anyone not stayed in an Airbnb? Okay, a few people. So take this as a kind of a plugin for Airbnb. I started going to Airbnb as I started writing this case, and now I tend to do that a lot. Highly recommend it. Sherry, uh, please, you wanted to share something. Oh, okay. All right. So, what does Airbnb do? They rent cabanas like this. They don't rent, others rent. Like Laurie rents this cabana in Sonoma County. So we have this program that runs in San Francisco now for a week. And so when I go there, I try to see if I can get an Airbnb in the wine country. And I found this for $190 with a pool and all this cabanas. Looks awesome. 36 people have rated this as 5 stars. That's perfect. Now, what is the next step? I go and read these reviews. They say that Lee says that they use Airbnb quite a bit, and this was easily the best ever. The property is even better than the picture. The host even brought coffee and a light breakfast in the morning. Wow, this seems very good. So then I say, okay, click it and go buy this. So how does Airbnb make money? They charge both the hosts and the guests. The guests pay 6 to 12% of the reservation subtotal. Hosts pay about 3% of the service fee. So what's the business challenge for Airbnb? How do we improve the rental prospects of our hosts and guests to better identify rental options? So the strategic option is, can I use the content, the text in all the reviews? So all of this, what is the value here? And then how can I change the price? So how can I use price and text to better improve the rental prospects of my properties? Pretty simple. Now to do this, our model says you first need to figure out your mental model of how the process works. And you can start this by doing a customer journey map and then figuring out what is your intervention or the company's interventions to improve the journey map. So one way of doing this is saying, okay, I have profit per property, and that is coming from price, gross margin, number of rentals, and minimum stay per rental. And number of rentals is driven by review rating, review sentiment, and property attributes. Now basically what we want to see is, do these have any value over and above review rating and property attributes? So we now see that using this kind of process, we have this kind of mental map. This is a very simplistic mental map for illustration purposes. Typically, you'll go through a whole process of understanding the customer journey and identifying interventions that the firm makes at each part, and then from that, investments on those interventions, and then finding out what are the things that you need to predict or change to influence the journey of the customer. So that's kind of, it takes a long process, but I think this is where you're taking something which is in the minds of everyone in your organization and putting it into pen and paper and have this as a property of the firm that you can then go back to and consult as you make other decisions. So this is what you do as a heuristic. This is putting the heuristic and making it evident to everyone. What decision would you make in case you did not have data? What were your assumptions? You're putting it out in paper. Then you're looking for data to test your heuristics. But as you're doing this, there are many challenges that you'll have to address. Right? Is that data available to measure all parts of your mental model? Most of the time, it is not. Then what are the proxies you can use to measure your mental model? What type of data is it? Structured or unstructured? Internal or external data? Is the data available for all the customers or only a sample? What is the reliability? What are our values in working with data? This is where responsible stewardship of data comes into play. Can we use certain data even though they're useful? Those are the questions that need to be answered at this stage. Then using if the data, you are looking at insights, and this is where analytics comes into play. As you can see, I got to the data and insights analytics part halfway through this process. Till then, we were looking at the strategy. This is one of the things that companies need to understand, is that not to dive straight into the data, but take a step back and understand why they're using this and how is the business going to improve by using this data. And you've heard a lot of variety of tools: descriptive, predictive, prescriptive. Some of you have taken my class in data marketing analytics, or have taken data science, and those are the we have talked about all the tools that you use in those, like segmentation, market response models, forecasting, and all of those things come into play here. And deciding which kind of tool you need for what type of data is really important at this stage. So what did we do for this? How would the analytics look for this problem? Well, you have a lot of text data that you can use text analytics to identify the review sentiment of the property. And then you have the price, star rating, and property attributes over here. You put all of these into a regression to predict saved wishes, because that is a proxy for demand. Okay. So what we did was, there was actually a marketing analytics class project that went in and collected data from all the Airbnb properties in one day, and we took, for this case study, data from data from Miami and Paris, and that's what I'm going to present here as to what happened. So we looked at this data for Miami and Paris and ran this regression we have just shown here. And what did we see? Surprisingly, sentiment plays a role only in Paris and not in Miami. Price does not play a role in Paris, but plays a role in Miami. And this happens for number of reviews and saved wishes, the same thing. So why do you think that is happening? Why is sentiment more important in Paris and not in Miami, and price more important in Miami and not in Paris? Any ideas? And this is real data from Airbnb. So I hear a lot of the main reasons in the chat now is that Paris part of an exciting vacation, maybe just a couple, and you want it to be romantic and nice, and a lot more complex set of factors at play in Paris. So you don't want price to be the big determinant. Miami could be a family fun vacation. Place is not that important. Maybe you're more confident about the place, and given it is Airbnb and this was the US website, a lot of it could be about the US and consumers in the US traveling to these two places. So it clearly seems to suggest that you need a regional strategy for Airbnb, not just a strategy that is same across the board. Right? So for in Paris, you need to feature review sentiment. In Miami, you need to feature price. So as we were developing this case study, I also talked to some people in Airbnb and learned some of the things they do now. If anyone is a host, has anyone put their house on Airbnb in the group recently? Chip is ready to go to Paris and Miami. Awesome. Has anyone put their house on Airbnb for rent from others, or acted as a host for Airbnb?
Hey, Mark.
Helena, so are you aware of the smart pricing option that Airbnb did?
No, he sent me an email early this morning acknowledging my voicemails. Said he was going to call me this morning. I waited until about 11 o'clock. I tried to call him, left him a voicemail, and then I sent him an email this afternoon saying, I left you a voicemail. Please call me so we can discuss the topic. So I haven't heard from him. I've reached out to him now 4 times.
So what you see with this
No, this is really the first time I've engaged with him as part of a deal. He was promoted. He was an architect before. Now he manages the group. But he's a straight shooter. Every other time I've called, he's picked up the phone. I don't think he's dodging me in any way. He acknowledged in his email to me that that he planned to discuss it with me. So there's no reason for him not to. I can try him again, but I put in since you and I spoke, I have now 4 messages into him, three voicemail, 1 email.
At least this isn't personal. That's right, John. So Airbnb suggests prices to users, right? This is called smart pricing. Okay. So what this does is it takes all the data that it has and suggests what is the optimal price for the renters and for the hosts. And hosts have the option to use this price or price on their own. So it's a variation of the of how to use pricing and to better price their properties. Now there are super hosts. Now the super hosts are built based on their review sentiment, the sentiment of the reviews of the properties they host and what people feel of them as hosts. So Airbnb in parallel has been using some of this information to build and take all this analytics and convert it into strategy. And that's what I call as transformation, is the smart pricing and host badges. Now to do this, it's not easy, right? You then need to engage an optimization team, develop the smart pricing button. If it's a review sentiment, you need text analytics on scale and decide how to do the super. These are massive projects that are spawned because analytics found something in the data. Now the transformation would involve being able to take all this information and it becomes a leadership issue at that point and calls for change. And this is where I think some of the design thinking tools are interestingly useful. Now, design thinking is about understanding customers and building products and prototypes that the customers like. But the same concept can be done if you think of your stakeholders in your firm as your customers. Now, use the same empathy and listening that you do in design thinking to listen to the stakeholders who would be affected by this decision. Identify their challenges, preferences. Identify the assumptions that they have about the world and surface those assumptions and build rapid prototypes and learning launches to test these assumptions. And that's exactly what we are suggesting here, is use this transformation and use it as a design thinking learning launch, and that, but not on customers, but on your own internal stakeholders who will have to change as a result of the insights that you get from analytics and the changes that analytics will drive in your organization. So to do that is a process where I think the cyclical process has to be done in the agile method, where you have it like small rapid cycles. Go through this process of strategic challenges, mental models, data insights and transformation in rapid cycles. Go through this quickly in rapid cycles so you can then take that information and from each cycle and push it into the next. And that's also how this rapid prototyping and design thinking approach helps in analytics. So what we're basically suggesting is learn what you know about product management, about developing new products, and treat analytics as a product that you're developing, And if once you have that shift in mindset, you can have a lot more success in becoming analytics rich. As one chief marketing scientist told me, in the end, it comes down to what is implementable. And analytics is only as useful as how it is implementable. So to resolve these paradoxes, you need a systems approach with continuous learning. And it starts with the business challenge. And as I said, this is not cyclical all at once. So this is a loop that you go through rapidly, and you go from one loop to the other. You start with the business challenge, move to your metrics and mental models, heuristics about the world, identify data to test the data and insights to test the mental model, update your mental model, and drive transformation by empathizing with your stakeholders. And then once you have this transformation, it presents new business challenges that then leads to the next cycle, which is based on the updated mental model. So to wrap here, and I want to leave some few minutes also for any outstanding open questions that you may have. The 5 paradoxes of data analytics are market success, uncertain outcomes, problem complexity, data curation, and perfection pursuit. So any questions you have about the topic, anything that we have not covered that you think we should be thinking about, any general thoughts, I would welcome your comments and suggestions at this point. I see a few people typing here. Multiple people are typing. Jesse, we are going to keep the recording. We are going to keep, I think we will have the recording of this session in the alumni website, so you will be able to get it through that. So best in class analytics platforms or technologies. These days R is good. Python is getting very good, and I think it's going to rapidly scale. Platforms, I've liked AWS. It is good. And yeah, that's I think Python is the way to go, and I have seen it go much faster than anyone else. It's going to be a little more time before it gets more options in it, but it's a good one. Okay, the next question. What's the best way to get started if you don't have a statistical data analytics mindset but want to test and learn? I think Emily's suggestion here is good. Gene has a good course on design thinking and testing that will get you going. And I have a week on experiments in my analytics MOOC, a Coursera course on marketing analytics. That would be also a good place to start, where you're looking at A/B testing and basically using a scientific method to understand the value of different options. I think in life sciences and healthcare, the main things that we have seen are, Salesforce allocation. One thing that I am seeing is a lot of analytics, product analytics coming in-house, and a lot more understanding of blogs and text data, external data about people's chats and preferences. I think that is going to be a big driver coming soon. Jesse, I think that is the same thing with B2B too. One of the B2B companies I have worked with use two actually. One is using Salesforce.com to understand the sentiment of the customers and the salesperson, and customer blogs to do sentiment analysis, and also Salesforce allocation tools in terms of how many sales calls to allocate for current customers versus acquisition, and how do you optimize your sales call to improve the lifetime value of the customer. And it depends on the type of customer, B2B firm. If you are directly supplying to other OEMs, then the Salesforce allocation model is good. If you go through a distributor, or if you have only a few customers, then the more sentiment analysis and understanding about people, your salesperson interactions with your customers is a good thing. I think Steve, the bootstrapping of analytics is mainly around agile rapid prototyping, and I think that's where it is very important. Start with a low-hanging fruit, design the analysis and the experiment that could maybe be proved in 2 weeks, and then show their proof of concept, and then go to the next from there. At this point, given the uh, in a very general sense, that's what I think. I think the human capital issue is definitely a big deal. There is going to be a race for data scientists, and as I was saying before, it should actually be data curators, and there is going to be a big mad rush for people who can combine strategy and analytics, and that's where it is going to be the biggest driver, and it is going to be the challenge of the next decade, is how do you build the capability and come people skills. How do you tool up with people? How did I capture sentiment from comments at Airbnb? I used the QDAP package in R to do sentiment analysis. So I get polarity scores. So QDAP in R. Okay. Okay, so if there are, and of course, as I mentioned before, I would welcome the opportunity to continue this research with your organization. And so, and um, if you are interested, please do contact me, and I would love the opportunity and look forward to working with you. And if you have any other comments, please send them to me. I'll look forward to engaging with you outside of the webinar as well. Sherry, we are developing online Coursera specialization on the topics that we just discussed here. So stay tuned. Something should be coming. Not soon, but it's in the works. Not soon enough, I would say.
Wonderful. Well, on behalf of all of the alums, thank you so much, Raj. We really appreciate your time and expertise. We also want to thank the alums who participated in today's webinar. We hope that you'll join us for our next session, which will be led by Professor Yael Grushka-Cocaine on managing major or mega projects. That will take place on Thursday, December 8th, and then our January session is scheduled for Thursday, January 12th, and that will be led by George Barbie, and we'll discuss advancing an innovative and global culture in your workplace. You can register for these events and find recordings of previous webinars on the Alumni Events webpage. Thank you all. Thanks, Raj, again, and enjoy the rest of your day.